A teacher from my high school said that this happened to his daughter when she used to do babysitting. It was sometime back in 2012. Now, this was around sometime in November of 2012, and this teacher's daughter, I'm going to name her by the name Charlie. Charlie, or Charlotte, used to do babysitting for people as she did it as a side job. She was 17 at the time of this story, and this is definitely one of the most creepiest encounters she's ever had while babysitting. Now, to make it a long story short, she lived in an area that wasn't really the nicest nor the best, so sirens would be often heard a few times a week. Now, this was sometime when she was getting home from school early enough so she could be getting things ready, do her work for school, and then babysit these two kids. They were both ages 10 and 12. Some people may argue that 12 is a little too old for babysitting, but of course they were special needs, so the pay was more. Now, when Charlie got there, she went over and invited herself in the house with the exception of her neighbors. They were her neighbors' kids that she was going to babysit while the neighbors were going out. So they went out, and while they were gone, that's when Charlie started doing some stuff with the kids, like hanging out with them, and she even made them dinner. Now, fast forward to maybe about sometime around maybe who the kids were getting really tired, which was around sometime at 9 p.m., which of course, that's when she started to put the kids to bed. As she was putting the kids to bed, she ended up hearing one of the kids talking from their bedroom. She went over there to ask, why was he awake? She asked why he was awake, and he said that there was someone in the closet. She at first wasn't sure as to what he was talking about, but he said that there was a man in the closet. She ended up opening the door and revealing to be a man who was bald, happened to be in his 20s, and he just gave a creepy looking smile. That was when Charlie got the two kids, and they got out of that area as soon as possible. They got out of the house and went to next door neighbor where they would call 911. The neighbors didn't want to get involved, so they let Charlie do that. And of course, the police arrived and they arrested the man. As it turns out, he had been a homeless squatter, and he had been living in this house for at least a month or two. It obviously really scares them knowing that it was from the child's bedroom. What was this guy's intentions were, they weren't sure, as he might be dangerous, but they couldn't really tell what to do or expect. Ever since that story, Charlie has never did babysitting then again, as she always has this thought of someone coming into their house. Now she's being more cautious and check every room to make sure that no one was there. So that was her story, and hope you can learn from it. A few years ago, this happened to one of my friends who happened to be babysitting and taking that job for at least a few years now. My friend at the time, we'll call her Laura, and this was sometime around 2014. This was sometime around maybe March, and it was around the time when the kids were pretty much off from school for spring break. However, both of the parents had to work both shifts at night, so of course Laura was asked to babysit these kids. They were at least 2 to 5 years old, so there were two kids. So it wasn't really that hard for Laura to babysit, as she has been doing this for a number of years. When she got there, the parents had showed her the schedules of what each kid has to do and stuff. Basically, the usual things. Laura actually found this relaxing since she didn't really have any school for 2 weeks and she was really enjoying her time off from school. Now this was sometime around when the spring was coming, and of course winter was starting to die off. However, the kids seemed to be really happy for Laura to be here, so they started spending time together and they were watching TV. I think it was SpongeBob SquarePants that they were watching. As they were watching, Laura ended up hearing what seemed like odd shuffling coming from downstairs. She wasn't so sure as to what it was or what that sound was, but it sounded not really good. It obviously sounded like something was shuffling down the basement. She ends up deciding to go down to the basement just to have a look. When she went down to the basement, she couldn't find anybody in there, and she even called out if someone was there, but there was no one to be seen. She just wasn't sure as to if this person was down there or if there was someone, but she couldn't really seem to find it. She ended up looking around, but she even turned on the lights, but she couldn't find anyone there. It was odd knowing that someone had to be down there, but why weren't they showing themselves? She decided to maybe just ignore it, thinking that maybe it might have been her imagination, and went back upstairs to look after the kids. Once the kids had gone to bed, it was around 8, and the parents were going to be home around 1 in the morning. So as Laura was pretty much just watching TV, she ended up hearing that odd shuffling again. It came from the basement again, so this time she grabbed her flashlight. When she grabbed her flashlight, she ended up deciding to go down the basement, thinking that there could be something in there. When she got down there, she ended up calling out to whoever was down there to show themselves, but there was no reply or voice. She obviously couldn't be sure as to who it was, so she was confused as to why the shuffling noises were heard. Now, they did have at least 5 cats at the house, so she thought that maybe the cats were playing and must have knocked over a box. Well, Laura searched all over the basement, but she couldn't find any source to the noise, and there were only 2 cats down there. They were just lounging on their beds. They weren't the ones making the shuffling noises, but something really was in there. Now, at first she called the dad and explained to him what sounds she was hearing. He said that if someone was really down there, then to lock the basement door and call the police. Now, she wasn't so sure if there was someone down there, but she was just really paranoid as her house had been broken into in 2011. It had been a few years since that incident, and she still gets PTSD from it every once in a while. As she looked in the basement, she ended up looking to see that there was a trail of what appeared to be ashes. Now, at first she was confused as to why the ashes were there, but she decided to follow the ashes. She followed the ashes, what appeared to be a dead body of a person inside. Now, obviously, this person was in a body bag, so she was confused as to how the person had strength to move the dead body down to the basement. As she looked around, she looked to see that there was a cellar door that happened to be open. Someone must have got in with the key, she thought. She ended up going up and closing the door, but as soon as she did that, she looked to see that there was a homeless man. He looked disheveled and he started mumbling stuff that Laura didn't understand what he was saying. So she ended up running back out and shutting the cellar door. As she locked the cellar door, the man started pounding frantically and started screaming. Obviously, she went upstairs and called 911. And as she was calling 911, One of the kids who heard the banging and panicking from Laura went down to ask if everything was okay. Laura obviously lied, saying that things were okay, but the child has somehow knew that things weren't okay. The police arrived and they eventually went down to the cellar and they arrested the man. It turns out that he had been breaking into people's houses by putting dead bodies in there. How was he able to put dead bodies in there was anyone's question. But since that night, Laura has PTSD was a lot worse and had to get therapy for at least a few months. She didn't do babysitting for at least a few months during their time as therapy, but ever since she's been doing better. She's never had any incidents while babysitting like that happen again. Was this man going to hurt her, rob her, or do God knows what? She doesn't even want to know what his intentions were. It still freaks her out to this day when she looks at it. She's got 3 kids now, and she's going to make sure that the kids will never go through anything like that.